Ya nanate. I'm not going to introduce myself again. Nishlini adi nishlim. That hasn't changed. So, speaking of change, that's what we've talked about all day. Here's what we heard. We need to educate our people. The nek achito, the laganak achushi, the laganak achushi, yisi. That's what I'm hearing. That's what I'm noticing. We talked about our sense of community. What is that? And I mentioned that earlier. What is it? It's changed. It's changing. We talked about how we develop leaders as warriors. Warriors of the past and warriors of today. That is changing. The context for how we define and how we understand warriors is changed. At noon, we were encouraged to think for ourselves, to act for ourselves, and be self-determined. And we heard that theme throughout the afternoon. That we need to look beyond ourselves, that the refrigerator isn't necessarily empty, or that we're not necessarily going to go hungry if the refrigerator is empty. If we stop and look at the refrigerator and decide we're out of food, we have no more food, and starve to death, we are a sorrowful person. We are not innovative, we are not creative. We are not thinking for ourselves, we are not being self-determined. That's what I keep hearing all afternoon. And then we talked about two kind of dichotomies. And I have to add the word ironic there as well. How many of you have listened to an 8-track? Oh, they're all saying, what is that? 8-track. How many of you own an iPod? And some of you are saying, what the heck is that? The councilmen should all get one? Okay. Okay, but I'm pointing out a couple of things. We talked about what do we mean by tradition. For those of us that have been listening to 8-tracks, we define tradition one way. Those of us that own an iPod and can operate an iPhone and a computer, we have a different definition of tradition. We talked about how things have been traditionally done. So, relative to what I just said, what do we mean by tradition? We're going to have a lot of answers. What's inherent in these examples is that things have changed. And that's the point I'm making. Things are changing. So in light of this change, what kind of government is good? Uh-oh, now we're in trouble. And so I also heard, if we're going to form a government, it has to be a kind of government that should respect diversity. Now we're in even deeper trouble. Is there such a thing as a government that can respect diversity? In a democracy, is diversity really a value? Yes and no, probably. Uh-oh, I'm getting the eye from Peter. He's my elder. He's the walking encyclopedia. He will have an answer for that. I know, Peter, we will. But I'm going to stay away from your answer. I have a lot of respect for this man. But here's what I'm seeing. In a democracy, in the kind of democracy that we've lived under since 1776 coming forward. We talk about diversity, and we as Native people in this country have been part of that diversity. Have we been respected? Have we been valued? Have we been a part of that democracy? I don't know. Nobody's saying anything. They're going like this, but nobody's going like this. That's the question that I have to ask in a democracy, in a governance. In the kind of government that we have prior to 1980s, Navajo Nation, did that kind of government respect diversity amongst us? Does the current one? Let me ask you this then. If we are going to identify ourselves as Navajo, who is Navajo? Going back to what was said this morning. If 1/4 blood is defined as the minimum level at which we can find Navajo, and if we ask this question about 50 years from now, we're in trouble. We're going in that direction. And if we're going to define ourselves by how and if and whether we speak the Navajo language, we're also in trouble there. And we talked about education, our education system here on Navajo Nation. What kind of education system is that? It's a Western form of education where we learn English. The measures for how we define success and achievement, is it how and to the extent that we know the Navajo language and culture? I don't think so. We talk about AYP and who has made it and who hasn't. What sort of measures are used to define if and whether somebody makes AYP or not? Again, it's one way or the other. It's not Navajo language or culture. And when we have a conversation, the neck etcha yatel tito tatina neck etcha case though. We start talking in Navajo. We want to go back to the old ways and do it the old way and try to speak all Navajo and think in Navajo. How many of us are capable of speaking in Navajo and thinking in Navajo? If you are Navajo, do you know how to think in Navajo? Chief Justice, we had a meeting. He was the one who was talking about thinking in Navajo. We lasted about 2 minutes. That's where we're going. Going back to identity and institutional change. Reform. What do we mean by reform? Government reform. I think a lot of these ideas are born here in places like this. This is where it begins. We need to listen to our young leaders of tomorrow here. We need to respect and value their ideas. Many of us probably think, oh yeah, these are just a bunch of kids who went to school somewhere and here they are. Dismiss them as such. But this is where it begins. This is where our leaders of tomorrow are born and their ideas are born and grows from here. And this is where and how movements begin. In the Begaye world, it's called social movement. We can go back in history and talk about how many times and where all these social movements have begun and have grown to be what it is today. It happens this way. This is how it begins. So we've shared a lot of ideas, and I think a lot of these ideas How do you say it? But that's okay. But that's okay. Your ideas are still there. And I do that, and I was critical of many of the ideas because I'm here to make a point. The overall good for what's happening here is what I'm looking at as I'm saying that. And I try not to be so critical, but I need to be constructive, and that's what I think I'm trying to do. So if you feel offended because of what I say, I don't mean to. Talk to me, and I'll correct my words. So please understand that. And I'm speaking English because I feel much more fluent in English, and I think in English. That's the thinking that in that case. That's probably true. And in fact, I feel much more comfortable standing before a Lagana audience than before a Navajo audience. And so I look forward to the day that we have one of our young leaders as the Navajo Nation president. I look forward to the day when someone who is less than a quarter blood take that office. Someone who's maybe limited English or limited Navajo, but speaks mostly English in that office. I look forward to the day when someone with a doctoral degree takes that office. And those are our leaders of tomorrow. Those are the ones we have to listen to and value. Today, there's many more out there. There's many more who are going to be coming back. They're out there. They're coming. Get ready. Let's welcome them. Let's not keep them out there. That's what I'm hearing. That's what I want to share. Those are my ideas. And thank you for listening to me. And I don't mean to offend you, but thank you very much.
Thank you, Arnold. Those of you that have stayed with us practically all day. Nzada chini so kredo aro kudoshin and they ni kato le.